It's 1995. I'm 8 years old, and I just got done seeing my first Batman movie on the big screen. I loved it. To me, Batman Forever was a home run. Nostalgia is a powerful thing, and Batman Forever is ingrained in my psyche, for better or for worse. I don't know why I say for better or worse, it's a movie I enjoy to this day. It seems like the knee-jerk reaction of the general masses is to hate this film, but it's totally enjoyable. I think it gets unfairly lumped in with Batman and Robin, which, yeah, that was a stinker through and through. Although it is a treat to watch and make fun of. What's interesting about Batman Forever is how much darker it was than people realize. Not only in terms of its deeper storyline with Bruce Wayne, which was mostly left on the cutting room floor, but also because of what was going on behind the scenes. So sit back, relax, grab a bat bag of popcorn, and let's take a look at the underrated Batman Forever. Recently, I rewatched Batman Forever with my wife. It was a blast. It still tickles the part of my brain that releases nostalgic dopamine. However, now that I'm an adult, I couldn't help but notice some of its stranger elements.
What's up, dude? Hey.
How did you get in here?
Alfred.
Traitor!
That tracks.
Who took that shot?
What's with the bat nipples? You want criminals to know how cold it is? And what's with the butt shot? I mean, that was on an actual shot list. I can't believe it.
Look, the director just told me to squat. I didn't know he was gonna.
You want to discuss this over dinner?
I'll get drive-through.
It had been 3 years since Batman Returns, the second and final film of the Tim Burton duology, debuted to muted success. Don't get me wrong, it was a hit, it just wasn't the phenomenon that Batman 89 was. That was always going to be a tricky mountain to climb anyway. Batman 89 grossed $411 million worldwide. In comparison, Batman Returns grossed $266 million worldwide. The studios, I guess, were expecting a smaller drop in profits, but that's not the only reason they were disappointed. Batman Returns caused a lot of controversy when it came out in 1992. Parents who took their young children to see it complained about the violence and sexual nature of some of the scenes. McDonald's had a huge promotional tie-in with Batman Returns, but the scene where the Penguin is gushing black stuff from his mouth made them rethink the campaign. I mean, not enough to actually pull the plug, but yeah, they thought about it. Wasn't that nice of them? Selling Happy Meals to kids while promoting a film that parents found inappropriate? Well, that made Warner Brothers nervous. They blamed Tim Burton for the disappointing returns, and he was out the door. I was 5 years old when that movie came out, and I wasn't allowed to see it until I was much older, although I read the comic book and had action figures and even a McDonald's toy from the infamous Happy Meal campaign. My imagination probably made the movie into something more epic than if I had actually seen it when it came out. In fact, I remember when we were driving into town one day, I looked in the back of my parents' car and found a hidden laserdisc of Batman Returns that my dad got from That's Rentertainment, a local video shop we used to go to. Apparently, my dad rented it to see if it would be appropriate to watch with me, and nope. The verdict was, it wasn't. The cover looked amazing though. I still love that poster to this day. I can still smell the plastic cover of it right now, and anyway, moving on. When it came to the third Batman film, the studio was eager to infuse a fresh new vision into the franchise. That's another thing about Batman Forever. Is it a continuation of the Burtonverse? Is it a reboot? Is it somewhere in between? Well, if you look at the evidence, it's actually just a more flamboyant sequel to the Burton films. Alfred is the same, Commissioner Gordon is the same, the line where Chase Meridian says, "Or do I need skin-tight vinyl and a whip?" is obviously a reference to Catwoman from Batman Returns. The search for a new director was in full motion. Sam Raimi and John McTiernan were briefly considered to direct, but the job went to Joel Schumacher. Schumacher was known for his films The Lost Boys, St. Elmo's Fire, Flatliners, Falling Down, and The Client. Aside from The Lost Boys, there wasn't a lot of evidence for how he was going to alter the style of Gotham City and its flagship characters. His original pitch for a third Batman movie was to tell the story of Batman Year One, which would chronicle the early days of Bruce Wayne's journey to becoming the Dark Knight. It was a grittier, more serious take on Gotham's caped crusader. which would later be covered by Christopher Nolan with Batman Begins. At this time in Batman history, though, the studio was not down with this, like at all. They insisted on a lighter tone. It was now Schumacher's job to make a movie that would be more welcoming to its intended target audience, adults and their kids. At this point, Michael Keaton was still attached, although he was feeling uncertain about the prospect of making a third Batman movie without Tim Burton at the helm. When he met with Schumacher to discuss the direction of the new film, he was disappointed to hear that it was going to be lighter in tone. On the Backstage podcast, In the Envelope, Keaton said that the nail in the coffin happened when Schumacher said, "I don't understand why everything has to be so dark and everything's so sad." And Keaton said, "Wait a minute, do you know how this guy got to be Batman? Have you read? I mean, it's pretty simple." And with that, Keaton was done playing the Caped Crusader for good. That is, until he returned to the role almost 30 years later in The Flash. Schumacher was interested in Ethan Hawke and Keanu Reeves as a younger replacement for Keaton. However, he decided to go with Val Kilmer after seeing the movie Tombstone. In Val Kilmer's autobiography, I'm Your Huckleberry, he recounted how he was in Africa, having just been attacked by a gigantic antelope and just barely escaping alive, when he heard the news about the casting. Here's what he said.
"Where the hell have you been? I've just seen a man kill a kudu with his bare hands, and before that, I spent the morning in a bat cave." "Say that again, Val." "I spent the morning in a bat cave?" "That is too weird." "Why?" "They want you to play Batman." "What?" "Yeah, f***ing Batman, Val."
His agent then went on to explain that the studio wanted him for 3 Batman movies, not just one. His pay would increase each movie until the third one, where he would receive $10 million.
"Well, I'll have to read the first one." "Read it? Are you kidding, Val? Just do it."
And with that, Val Kilmer was the new Batman. In addition to the new Batman, Chris O'Donnell stepped into the role of Robin. Historically, this would be the last time, as of this video, that any actor has played the character on the big screen. I'm sure that will change in the future, but right now, O'Donnell has that distinction. He was just coming off of his double whammy success from the movies Scent of a Woman and The Three Musketeers. He was obviously having the time of his life making this movie, and it shows on screen. A funny thing is, Chris insisted on driving the Batmobile instead of using his stuntman, and he ended up crashing and denting it. But hey, you know what? That's probably something a new Robin would do in the comics anyway, right? You know, there's a lot that worked about Batman Forever. It reinstated confidence in the Batman merchandising machine. I mean, its presence was everywhere at the time. T-shirts, a comic book adaptation, trading cards, action figures. I personally had the Batmobile, walkie-talkies, toys, you name it. Of course, there was also the McDonald's tie-in merchandise. I remember there was a sweet poster hanging on the window of my local Mickey D's, and I really wanted it. So my mom went inside and straight up asked if we could take it home. An employee went and asked their manager, and surprisingly, they said, sure. Wasn't that cool of my mom? Warner Brothers wanted a Batman for the MTV generation, and they got that. It also helped that there were 2 hit songs from the Batman soundtrack. One was Seal's Kiss from a Rose, which peaked at number 1 for 4 weeks on the ARC Top 40 Pop charts, and the other was U2's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me, which peaked at the number 10 spot. That video had an interesting, dark, animated look to it, although I don't remember seeing it as much as the Seal music video. My childhood friend Dan used to sing the words to Kiss from a Rose incorrectly all the time. He'd sing it like, a kiss from a rose on the sea, and guess what? He'd always say, and guess what, while he stalled to come up with the right lyrics, you know? Oh man, hey, what's up, Dan? Miss you, man. Also, Batman Forever wasn't as over-the-top as many people remember. I mean, over-the-top villains had always been a part of the Batman films up to that point. Joker, Penguin, Catwoman, they're all over the top. Batman Forever wasn't a jumping the shark moment in the franchise. It was a reimagining that was actually done pretty successfully. I mean, I prefer the Burton films, but Forever has its charms as well. This was no Batman and Robin, okay? The backstory and internal struggle that Bruce goes through was actually very welcome at this point in the franchise. It's too bad most of those story beats were left on the cutting room floor. Scenes like Bruce Wayne finding his father's journal in the Batcave. In the journal, we find out that the Waynes didn't want to go to the theater on the night of their deaths, but Bruce insisted, which led to their murder. He also ends up facing his fears in the form of a giant bat, which he finds deep inside the recesses of the Batcave. They should have kept this part in, seriously. Now let's take a look at the dark side of the actors' egos. This was a huge problem. First of all, I didn't know this originally, but Tommy Lee Jones had a mean streak in him. Before we get into that, let's talk about the recasting of Harvey Dent for this movie. Actor Billy D. Williams was hoping to reprise the role he brought to life in Batman '89. In fact, he had a pay-or-play contract, which means that even if they decided to recast him, which they did, he would get paid. Well, I think that was a loss for the audience. They should have kept him around like they did with Michael Gough and Pat Hingle in the Alfred and Commissioner Gordon roles. However, the role of Two-Face wasn't written very well in this movie, so I guess Williams did dodge a bullet. Tommy Lee Jones decided to do this movie because his son was a huge fan of Batman and the character of Two-Face. Not only that, he and Joel Schumacher had just worked on the film The Client. However, the cartoony, clownish depiction of the character in this movie was miles away from what Jones had been known for playing up to this point. He seemed like he didn't really know how to pull this performance off in the end. Also, he literally hated Jim Carrey's guts. Oh yeah, you didn't know that? Yeah, Jim Carrey told the story on Norm Macdonald Live. You see, one day, Jim Carrey was eating at a restaurant and the waiter, who knew Carrey was working on Batman Forever, informed him that Tommy Lee Jones was eating there too. So Carrey walks over to say hi to him. At which point the blood drains from Tommy Lee Jones's face. He starts shaking. He gets up to give Jim a hug and says, "I hate you. I really don't like you." And Jim pulls up a chair and asks, "Gee, man, what's the problem?" And Jones answers back, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." The clincher was that this was right before they were going to shoot their biggest scene together. Was this a method acting moment on Tommy Lee Jones' part? You decide. That wasn't the only instance of egos clashing on this movie. Val Kilmer was going through a tough time on set for many reasons. Firstly, he was going through a divorce with his then wife, Joanne Whalley. He was also still reeling from the death of his dad, Eugene, who had passed away in 1993. This was something he actually bonded with Jim Carrey over, since Carrey's dad had died the same year they were filming Batman Forever. Not only that, Val had a hard time with the bat suit. And no, it wasn't the bat nipples. It was how heavy it was. We're talking almost 100 pounds when you factor in the cape and the heavy rubber suit. It didn't help that it took 2 hours to put on and 2 hours to take off. He also complained about the fact that he could barely hear anyone through the mask. It all came to a head when he and Joel Schumacher got into an argument. Kilmer got into a squabble with the first AD and some other crew members, and Joel had to step in to tell Kilmer to stop being rude. Schumacher had been quoted as saying Val was childish and impossible. Their fight led to Kilmer ignoring Schumacher for 2 weeks straight, which Joel was actually grateful for. He felt like it gave him a much-needed vacation from the unneeded drama. However, audiences were oblivious to all the drama going on behind the scenes when the movie debuted on June 16, 1995. It was a huge hit, grossing $184 million in America and $336 million worldwide. It reinvigorated the Batman franchise, and plans for a fourth film went into effect immediately. But we'll save that story for another video. Thanks for watching. I'm Scotty Dunn, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to feed the like and subscribe buttons with your brainwaves, and punch the notification bell to know when a new video comes out. See you next time!